Good morning, virtual villagers, and welcome to Beaded Wind Chimes with me, Kate, from What Kate Made. Hope you're all having a nice morning so far and that it's not raining where you are. We've got a bit cloudy weather today, but apart from that, it's lovely. So if you just bear with me a sec, I'm going to get you up live so I can see your comments. There we go. So if you're out there, just say hi, just send me a wave. Tell me how you're doing today, what you think of what we're making. So what we're going to make today is a beaded wind chime for your garden. And here's one I've made earlier. I will bring it over to show you. I'm doing it carefully because they tend to get very jangly and very... Now you can't see it all in the camera, so I'm going to show you the top half first. So I've used a wooden curtain ring as my top half, and then I put all the beaded strands all the way down, and my jingly bits at the bottom are keys. Now anything that jingles will make this work. It doesn't have to be keys, it doesn't even have to be metal. The sparkle, I've added some little tiny bits of glass. These are this glass here is the one, oops, let me get the right way. It's the kind of thing that you see sewn onto saris. Sorry about the noise outside. Let's leave the window open. It's very hot. The tractors are going up there. And I don't know if you can see, but my keys on this one, oops, go the wrong way. I used alcohol paint to paint them. Now, I'm not going to do that today because it takes too long to dry. One of them I put, I don't know if you can see that, I did with glitter. So this is our basic wind chime. All my beads are recycled. I buy old jewellery and take it apart. Anything I see at a charity shop or a boot sale or wherever, I buy them. Even if they're the ugliest necklaces in the world, if they've got a few nice beads in, it's worth buying them. So that is the one I made for my garden. Now, since then I've refined it slightly. I'm not happy with the way it's hung on this string, so I'm going to show you a different method. And I'm also going to hide this ugly bit where I've fastened the lines on with glue. So I'll put that to one side. I was trying to find somewhere to hang it up so you could hear it tinkling, but I haven't got anywhere in this room to hang it. And I'll show you what you're going to need to make your own. So the first thing you're going to need is a curtain ring. Again, charity shops, car boot sales, if you see curtain rings. In this bag I've got a wooden ones. Well, I don't think the wood, I think the wood effect. And there's some metal ones as well. So I'm going to use the wooden one today. You just unscrew the little cup hook from it. Metal ones, you can't do that, but this one you can. So I have already started today because I didn't want you to watch me threading 4 different strands on. I'm only going to do 4 strands on this one. So the second thing you need is fishing line. Fishing line is brilliant for this. It's strong, it's durable, it's cheap, and it's see-through. So it's really good. So that's the fish. I keep going the wrong way. Fishing line for your strands. I'm also going to be using beads, obviously. So yesterday I spent the afternoon breaking up a load of jewellery that I had bought. So the colour scheme I had the most of, if you like, was these cream and brown and sort of pearlized ones. So that's the colour I've used, because with this colour of curtain ring, it goes very well. I've also got some macrame cord for hanging it with. These are leftovers from when I've been doing macrame. There's always long bits you cut off, so I keep them. So I've got 4 strands of cord there. That's going to make my hanging system. I'm also going to use some odds and ends of other cord because I want to cover up all the, you know, odd bits. So you also need your metal bits. I've decided to use brass keys this time. I've already done 3, but this is a nice brass key. I'm not going to colour them because the brass colour goes nice with the beads I've chosen. What else have I got? The usual scissors, pliers. Probably won't need the pliers. Glue. I've got some glue to glue the cord on with later. Needle and thread. That's basic. Oh, and the glass. Now, I used glass on my first one because that's what I had in, but I used it all for my first one. So I bought some more, but I didn't get glass. I got these. These are called mosaic tiles, mirror mosaic tiles. I'm not sure what they're made of. I think they're shiny metal, but they're not glass, and they're much easier to handle. It looks a bit dull because it's got like a protective film on the front, but it's and they're self-adhesive, so less glue is needed. Now for this project I'm using the square ones. This box that I bought has got square, round and a triangular shaped ones in as well, so there's quite a lot in it, and it comes in a little plastic box, so that's handy to keep it together. I think that's everything. So I'm going to turn you down, just bear with me a minute. So can you see my hands? Yeah. So as I said, I've started this already because it would be quicker. So you can see that I have already done 3 strands, and I'm going to do 4. So there's my beads and my keys, and you can see the knotted fishing line is really good to knot. It goes into good tight knots. I will bind round this later and also probably put a little dab of glue on just to make sure, doubly sure it's not going to go. So the first thing we do is measure our cord, our fishing line, sorry. So on my strands, I have used an 18-inch cord. Now, I don't know whether you can see all of my ruler, but my ruler is 18 inches. So I'm just going to measure 1 strand and cut it. Right. And I'm going to do 12 inches of beads. It's quite difficult to get hold of this, excuse me, this very, very fine fishing line because it's invisible. So the first thing I'm going to do is tie it to the key. So it's got a handy hole on this key. I'm going to tie that in a knot and then another knot. This is what I mean about the fishing line. It ties good tight knots. So I've had a wind chime outside permanently for about 18 months, and it was more the hanging that disintegrated. It got blown about in the wind and kept getting blown off the tree, but it lasted quite well. Okay, so that is our cord. I'll just put the ruler to one side for now. So the next thing, I'm just going to move that out of the way. The next thing we need to do is thread on our beads randomly. I find random really, really hard. Oh, sorry, no, that's not the next thing we're going to do. Next thing we're going to do is put on our glass. So out of my little box of glass tiles, I need to get 2. We put them on back to back so that you've got and what it creates is a nice sparkle. It reflects all over the garden when they turn in the wind. So I'm just going to use the scissors just to peel off the front protective covering. I'm not going to peel the backing off yet, but it just has a protective film on it, so you can see it's nice and shiny underneath. Get the second one off if I can. There we go. And then I'm not going to put them right next to the key. I'm going to leave about 1 inch of space. Then I'm going to peel off the sticky backing, or non-sticky backing. Put that down there, and then just press the fishing line onto it, and then put the other one on the other side. So we've got a double-sided reflect, so it reflects as it turns. Simple as that. With the other glass ones, if you don't have the sticky backed ones, you just glue them with the glue gun. So now our strand is ready for the beads. Now, randomly selected beads. I don't do random, I really don't. I find it very hard to not be uniform. But because I've done the others this afternoon, and yesterday afternoon, and I'm going to go at it now. Now, this is my selection of beads. There's a lot of these round ones, but they are different. There's some pearl ones, there's some wooden ones, dark ones, light ones. I've got a selection of other odd shaped beads. So it's nice to get a good mixture of different shapes, lots of round ones, but flat ones and long ones. So I like to start with a long one, and you just thread your fishing line through. This is quite good because it's reasonably stiff, and then you just keep threading, alternating as much as you can randomly what beads you're using. But saying that, you do want to try not to get two the same colour together, and not too many of the same shape together. So I am going to proceed randomly. Now, while I'm proceeding randomly, I'm going to say a few highs. Hi to Colleen. Nice to hear from you. Hi to Irene. Irene watches nearly every time. One of my regulars. Also, hi to Heather. Good way of hiding your spare front door key without drawing attention. I would never have thought of that. And that is something I've always been meaning to do, is to get somewhere, a door key somewhere around the house, because I'm quite often forgetting mine. So I'm saying I'm proceeding randomly. So I've got this far. I need to put something a bit darker on it, I think. I'll try that one, that flat one, because that's a bit different. I'm aware that you're not seeing very well how I'm doing this, because I'm just going to move the beads to one side now that you've seen what I've got in there, so you can see more of my hands working and the beads as I go along. I was particularly pleased with this selection yesterday because one of the beads was quite a long necklace. It's all these little wooden beads and little pearl beads were all on one necklace. It was quite a long one. It had about 4 different strands on it. So when I saw that in the charity shop, I went, ooh, I must have that for £2 or something. You know, if you'd bought that many beads in the shops, in the craft shops, it would have cost you about £15–20. And these are lovely. They're wooden, and some of them are even glass. So, you know, you're getting a real bargain. And it was the ugliest necklace. You probably would not have worn it. So, and if you want to be quite conservative with your beads and not use too many, the long ones are good because they fill your strand up faster. Now, what I'm looking for is 12 inches of beads. So, because that will leave us with enough, well, from your glass anyway, that will leave us with enough to tie. So I've got about, I need about another 2 inches there. So that's maybe, I'll use more of the smaller ones because I've got lots of them. So yeah, I love shopping for beads. It's quite a nice little metallic one there. I'll put some flat ones in, but flat ones I've got, you need to have a biggish bead before you put a flat one on. Put that one on. And then I've got these that I like a piece of stone. I think that's about right. So I'm leaving myself about that much to tie it to the ring. So we'll call that for the beads. Pop them to one side. Out the way. Bring over my ring. Now what I've done is I've tied these at the quarters. So this one I'm going to tie there. So what I've done is I've left about 1 inch of line, and then I'm going to wrap this around a few times. I'm getting a bit of a metaphorical knot because I've got too many. I should have cut these spare. In fact, I'm going to do that now. Cut these spare ends off the other knots. Not too short because I want to be able to bind them in, but they're just getting them in the way. So then once I've wound it round a couple of times, I'm going to tie a knot, double knot, triple knot. And that's now fairly secure. So what we've got now is at the quarters, we've got our 4 strands with keys on the bottom. Now, what I'm going to do now is add the cords that are it's going to hang from. So the way I'm going to do it is I've cut my cord to the right length. These are they're about 24 inches. They're too long, but I'd rather have more than less. Now, I've sort of like debated about the best way to hang these and to fasten them on, and I've decided rather than knotting them that I'm going to bind them on with stitching. So I have threaded up a needle and thread, and the way I'm going to do it, I think, is I'm going to put the needle through the cord, through both strands. Pull it right. I've got a lot of thread on this because I'm going to do them all. Secure it with a little. I always knot my thread and then secure it by going through the loop at the end. And then I'm just going to secure it with a few stitches like that, and then I'm going to wrap the thread around and around like this. I'm just going to do it roughly for now because I want to move on and show you the rest of it, of how I'm going to finish it. We've got plenty of time, so you bind around a few times and then just secure it again with the knots. We will tidy it up as we go. So I'm just going to very quickly fasten on the others in the same way. Just switch my glue on and then it's ready for us. So that's the first one. That's going north. I'm trying to work out when I want to put my getting a bit of a tangle now. I want to put the dangly cords, or the cords it's going to hang from, at opposite sort of quarters to the actual strands. So I'm just going to spread these out a little bit just to make life easier for me. Yep, so we've got them going out at their angles, and we're going to put the cords like that. So I just want to get the cords on so I can show you how I'm going to bind them up to cover all the bits and pieces where it's joined. And so again, I'm going to catch a loop and fasten it in. Then I'm going to go round and round a few times. Just to, oops, sorry, I knocked the camera then and it all went jiggly jiggly. So you're binding it around that join. And then going through again, through both cords with your needle. Don't know whether I'm in camera range. And then I'll just catch that loop and fasten it off. So if you bear with me, I will just attach another one. That's 2. This may not be, I sometimes struggle to find ways of doing things, and I make things and then think, no, that didn't work. So with the previous one that I made, the blue and green one I showed you earlier, I just tied these on and then put a blob of glue on to hold them, and I thought that's a little bit clumsy looking. So I thought, well, what can I do? And you have to think about your materials, because it has to be weatherproof, whatever material you use, because it's going to be outdoors. So it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to choose materials that are suitable. So I thought about ribbon at first, but then I thought, well, ribbon's going to quickly discolour outside. So I ended up with cord. And I'm going to try and cover up all my bumps and lumps with the cord before I finish. So that's why I want to do all of these, and I can show you, because once I've put the covering on, I can't then go back and reattach another strand, because it will be outside the covering. Getting too many bits now. I'm starting to get caught up, so but this is the last one, and my glue has come hot, so that's good. Hot glue is pretty good outside. It's not the best thing for outside. You can get glues that are meant for outdoor and are much harder wearing. The one I use is called E6000, and it comes in a tube, so it's a bit like it's not super glue. It's not epoxy resin. You don't have to mix it, but it is a pretty good outdoor glue. I'm not using that today on here because I don't think it needs it. So what I'm now going to do is, I've got all my strands on of cord. I'm just going to put a little blob of glue just where they meet just hold them in place so they don't move around. And we want them to be pointing upwards, because that's the way they're going to hang. So this will just stop them from moving on the ring. Keep them more or less in the place we want them, so that it'll hang evenly. Right, leave that for a sec while it sets. So I will tidy these bindings up, but what I'm going to do now is bind this with some cord as well. I'm just going to glue it as I go. So I'll get myself another strand of cord. I'm just going to trim off this fluffy end where it's started to fray. And again with the glue, I'm going to put a blob there and press this into it very carefully, hiding it in the inside, and then I'm just going to get glue everywhere. Just going to wrap this round. It's a bit difficult at first, but once you get going, once your first lot of glue dries, it's easier to bind it round by you just sort of pushing it through. You don't need to glue it all the way, you just need to glue it at certain points. So I hope you can see that I'm starting to bind it round. Trying not to bind in any of my strands, so that only the loose ends. And every now and then I will put a blob of glue to just hold it, but I'm not, sorry, my hands keep moving out of the camera, but it's quite difficult to not get them in a tangle as you go, so I'm trying to be very careful. So I'm going to glue there where the end of that cord is. So that's the end of the cord where I bound this one, which is the hanging cord. Ow, glue. Just burnt myself. And then that will secure it there as I move it on further. Try and keep it as even as you can. And it just gives a nice effect. Sorry, I've got glue everywhere now. So I'm going to keep winding. I might need another strand of cord, but I'll just bear with this one for now. So I'm really just gluing about every quarter where I have secured the upright pieces. You can trim off these long ends where you've tied your fishing line. Put another blob of glue there, and that will hold the next few turns. So this is my upright piece there, and I'm just going to bind in that looser end under this. It's a bit rough and ready, but I am sort of rushing a little bit. I put a blob of glue on there just as I go to keep it sticking, stop it unraveling. No, I don't want to bind. I just need to move my strands around as I go, so I'm not getting them bound under in the wrong place. So they'll still dangle freely. It gets easier as your cord gets shorter when you're going round like this. Okay, so I will now put another blob of glue there and bind in that loose end as I go. So I'm coming to the end of this piece of string, so I will need to replace it in a moment. I'm just gonna put a little bit more glue, and then that's the end of that strand. I'll just grab another. It comes in useful, all these odds and ends of string I still have left. Put more glue to start the new one. If you've worked with this kind of glue before, I'm just going to use the end of the pen to stick it down, because otherwise it'll burn my fingers. Then you know that it's easy to get any loose strands off after. Once it hardens, it's easy to just get off if you've got bits that you don't want on. So now this is the last mortar. Okay. So now I'm just going to make sure that my strands are still loose and not tangled. So this is the upright piece, and that's the end of it. So I'm going to bind that under. Take that out of the way. A bit more glue. The glue stick's just about run out now. I just have enough to finish it, and then keep binding round to cover up that frayed bit. There are a few little bits. I've done this very quickly and rough and ready, so there are a few little bits where you can still see the curtain ring underneath, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. My final bit of glue, and then I shall take my scissors and cut it as close as I can, then just push that last bit in. Okay, now it does look like a tangled mess at the moment. We're going to take, these are our upright strands. They have got pushed a little bit out of place. I seem to have got more than I started with. No, that's it, that one's going that way. I've still got 4, but they're more or less evenly rounded. So I'm going to pop the camera back up, because the next bit I can't really show you with the camera down. I might turn it down again in a minute, but just bear with me a second. Hi, I hope you could see all of that. I'm aware it was a little bit difficult that we had lots of beads and lots of strands and lots of glue. I hope you got it. There's not much going on in the live chat, so I hope you're still out there. Right, so I'll show you what we've got so far. There is our wind chime, glittering and sparkling in the sun, and you can hear it dingle, clinging. I'll bring it slowly down, and you can see that we've got, that's the top of it. These are our hanging strands. So now we need to make something for it to hang from. The way to do this is you need to get it fairly even so that this bit's even. And I'm going to use a knot, that is a macrame knot, a gathering knot. I'm going to have to bend the camera down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, but I'm going to try and do it without turning it all the way down. So with a binding knot, gathering, it's either called a binding knot or a gathering knot. I'm trying to get you back. I lose where the camera is. There we go. We've got our 4 strands. It doesn't look even to you. This is hanging evenly now. So this bit here, I am going to very quickly secure with a little bit of cord, just because I want it to be, this is cord I'm going to remove later, but I want it to not move, my strands to not sort of shift so that it's hanging unevenly while I do my gathering knot. Let me just turn it a little bit more. That's it, so we can see better. Right, so a gathering knot, it's a macrame knot, and it's a technique that I use a lot. Now, to do it, you need another piece of cord, and you create at one end of the cord a loop, like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to place the loop there so that its long end is loose at the bottom. I'm going to move that off to one side. Try and move that so we can see. And so that shorter end of the loop, the longer bit, this bit, we're going to now wrap around both cords. So where I put that knot in to hold all my strands together, I'm going to start there, and I'm going to wind tightly from the bottom there up towards the loop that I made. And we can see we're creating this, can you see it? We're creating this sort of almost like a hangman's noose effect. And you can take it, make it as long or as short as you like. Keep it fairly tight. I think that's far enough for mine because it's a nice secure. Now, this is your loop you made earlier. This long end that you've just been working with, pass it through that loop so that it's then caught in the loop. The short end we left earlier, we now pull tightly, and you keep pulling until this end disappears under the binding. Keep moving you out the camera, I'm very sorry. Yeah, I think I'm going to show you another one. Sorry, it's very difficult because normally I would have the camera pointing down. What you can see now is that the loop you created has disappeared under this knot, and the end you left, which is, I can't identify now because they're all the same length. I think it's that one. the one we used to bind, has disappeared under there as well. And we're left with, oh dear, sorry. We're left with these two strands. So this is the short strand and this is the long strand we had. And we can just cut them off because the ends are now secure inside there and we don't have to worry that they'll unbind. And then if you just kind of spread your binding bit out, it's now this is the bit I use to just hold the strands together, and you can see, sorry, you've got a nice neat binding. It's hidden all the strands and we're still fairly even. Now this bit, we're going to hang it from these other cords. I'm just going to tip it down a little bit more. We're going to decide how to hang it to make what you can do is make a simple loop, but I think these strands might be better plaited. It's going to be difficult to plait them because there's actually 4, but I'm going to try and plait them and then make another loop. So I'm going to do them with 1 and 2. It's going to be a slightly off kilter plait, but it's just that if you just leave them separate, they will, it's awkward then to hang them because they'll separate as you're trying to hang them. So I'm just making a very rough plait. Probably would have been easier if I'd had 3 strands. It would have still hung as long as they were evenly spaced. So what I'm now going to do is create a loop by rebinding there. Now I'm aware that you couldn't see very much. I'm going to need a little bit more of that because I went slightly off camera before. So I'll do the binding knot again so that you can see better. Make my plait a little bit longer so my loop's big enough, because I'm going to hang mine on my tree outside and you need to have quite a big loop to get it over the branches. And that's a bigger loop, yeah. So I'm not going to cut the ends off till I've done my binding knot. So I'm going back to my piece of cord. You make a loop. So this is your loose end, your short end and your longer end. The longer end is what you're going to use to do the wrapping round with. So I'm going to make my second loop match that one, so it looks like 1, although it isn't. So I'm going to place my loop end free there. That's the end of the loop, the short end, and I'm going to take the longer end of my cord. This is the slightly awkward bit. This is where you start to wrap. So you start to wrap from the bottom of where you want your binding, and then you work towards your loop upwards, catching all the strands in. Sorry, I'm going to have to start again because I've got too many fingers. That's it. So loop there, short end, long end, and then you bind with your long end. This is where sometimes it's easier if you can put a peg on it, on the top bit, so you're not holding it in your fingers, but you bind it as tightly as you can. Sorry, I'm still not getting here, am I? Right, so I bound this. You can see that's my original knot. This is my second knot. It's a new piece of cord, Heather. And this is my long end I've been binding with. Pass that through that loop. And then the short end of the cord, which is here, you pull that downwards and it will, you can see it's pulling this loop back under your binding, and that effectively hides all your ends under there, so it won't unravel. So these are the two ends of my binding knot, so I'm going to cut them. These are the ends of the strands used to make the loop, and they can be cut off as well. Cut them quite close to your wrapped bit, and so you end up with a bind, and you just can work the ends under. That is that. Everything wrapped neatly away. I'm going to turn you back up now. I'm aware that that was not a very good demo of the binding knot. What I'll do is, if I will, I think I have a video of it. I will pop it on my Facebook page, What Kate Made. Now, so the big reveal, shall we? Move back slightly, so, and I'll, right. So there's your binding knot. That's your loop you're going to hang it with. There's your 4 cords, your wrapped ring, and your, my arms aren't long enough to get it right to the top. So you can see the light's really catching the glass bits there. All I need to do now is just trim off odd ends of fishing line and bits where glue's got a little bit stringy on it. But that is, I'm really pleased with that. I love the colours in it and the different textures of the beads, and it will add sound and sparkle and colour to your garden. I apologise a bit for the few technical difficulties. It isn't always easy when you're trying to handle a camera and you can't actually see what you do, what it's showing. I hope you make one. They are beautiful. I love a wind chime. My husband doesn't like them. He finds them annoying, but he just has to put up with it. So, oh, I love the tinkle. The keys do make a really nice tinkle. I have also made them with cutlery, with knives and forks, old cutlery, and they do make a really nice sound as well. Hope you've enjoyed that. Again, I apologise. I will try and get some better instructions for that binding knot, gathering knot. I always call it binding knot. I think in macrame it's called a gathering knot. If you want to look it up on YouTube and try it, you know, have another go. I just like to say thank you for watching. Hope you have a go at this lovely wind chime, and get out there, scour the charity shops for the ugliest necklaces with the nicest beads, and get yourself recycling some beads. So this is Kate. I'm saying goodbye, virtual villagers, and have a lovely day.